something I want to get into is debt and national currency and things like that. See, there's this illusion that nations are in debt, and it makes me think of the Willy Wonka meme. Oh, the nations of the world are in debt? Tell me who they're in debt to. And that's exactly it. It's the main defense of pro-capitalists to say we can't give you the provisions you need to survive because that would cause inflation, and inflation lowers the dollar, and inflation stems from debts to other nations, and blah-de-blah-de-blah. Who defines these terms? The nations! So, if Nation A wants to be a dick to Nation B, all Nation B has to do is say, fuck you, I'm gonna do it anyway, and if you don't play by my game, I'll go to war with you. That would be the simplistic answer, but that's not really why the Western world commits war so much. We're not committing war in the sense of getting something out of it logically, materialistically. It's abstract. The Western world goes to war with Iran soon, the Middle East in general right now. So to secure the profits of warlords and oil companies and things like that, but in no way does that benefit the nation in and of itself. It only benefits the people that happen to come from that nation and happen to have a lot of leverage in that nation. And that's capitalism for you. I mean, individually, there is debt. Individually, if you get into debt by credit cards or college tuition or something, that debt is real. Because you are indebted to that institution, and you know, the law enforcement and shit will say you're indebted to that institution. But that's where debt ends. Because how can a collective body be in debt to another collective body? It just makes no sense to me. It makes no sense at all. I mean, you know, look at it this way. If America is in debt to China, why is China producing all of Americans' goods? You know, that's a simple question. Why is China the one with the sweatshops if America is in debt to China? Shouldn't it be the other way around? But people don't stop to think about that shit. And on that notion, why is any nation in debt to any other nation? Couldn't you just say, we're good for it, we'll produce goods and services for you if you produce goods and services for us? It's just that simple. But no, somehow it can't be like that. Somehow there's got to be debt and servitude and war and poverty and blah, because capitalists want it to be that way. So that a very few people can own everything. And then we come back full circle to people don't want socialism because the government will own the means of production instead of private corporations. Who in government owns the means of production? Let's say tomorrow that America became a socialist nation, and I'm talking to people like Geno360 and WarCorp 666 and all the other counter-revolutionary scum. If tomorrow your nation became a socialist nation, who would own the means of production? Name names, because to say that the government owns it and government is bad. The government is not a person. The government is an institution. It is an institution of many, many, many individuals. And so for you to say it's bad for government to own the means of production, you're essentially saying it's worse that more people own it than less. Because you know who owns the means of production now? Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Google, whoever runs Google, you know, shit like that. How would that be any worse if the government owned it, which is democratically elected at best, and at worst is mandated by other government peers? You know, America lives in a republic, and to a large extent you don't vote for the people, but you do in some cases. So yes, you do get to elect the people that own the means of production to a large extent, whereas in capitalism you just never get to. And even when you don't, they are mandated by other legislators. And so it's safe to assume that for the sake of your nation, that government is going to act within the interests of the nation itself, not within the interests of private property, in the interests of profit motive. But, you know, I just don't understand capitalists at all. I don't understand what the fuck they're getting at when they're so scared of socialism And meanwhile, there's nothing to suggest that socialism could be any worse than capitalism, let alone, why? Why are you going to say that, oh, it's so bad? No, it can't possibly get any worse. So you may as well do it because the only place you have to go is up. So you may as well go up. What, do you like being in this position? Do you like living in a world where 1% of the global population controls 99% of all the resources? Or would you rather live under a system where at least 25% of the global population controls the 99% of the world's resources? It's simple mathematics. But, if people were capable of thinking logically, they wouldn't be capitalists. Because they don't get to be capitalists. You're not going to get anywhere by working really, really hard and making all the right decisions. So there's no point to you being a capitalist. But you're going to continue defending capitalism, and you're going to continue defending the debt crisis, the physical cliff, inflation, all this bullshit. It's just bullshit, man. There is nothing to gain from it. There is no reason to blame it on inflation. There is no reason to blame it on government spending, because it's all a ruse. It's a ruse to keep you scared, to keep you working, to keep you blaming shit that isn't there. Because at the end of the day, the same few people control the resources. And until you collectivize the resources, it ain't gonna get any better. So it's about high time you started considering collectivizing the resources. And the difference between a Marxist and an anarchist is how to go about it. Anarchists think that it can just happen overnight with a violent revolution, maybe not even a violent revolution, just peacefully getting together and saying, nope, we're not dealing with this shit anymore. And forming communes and blah blah blah, whereas Marxists believe you need a transitional period between government owning the means of production, and then, slowly but surely, the government and the people intertwine and become one entity, and then the means of production are owned by all. Now, whether or not you believe this or not, that the government will always become this social imperialist state that imposes its will on the people, blah blah blah, I'm not here to argue that point with you. What I'm here to argue with you is that you have, in the right, Mark Zuckerberg, Google, Bill Gates, they own the means of production. And then you have, on the left, the government owns the means of production. The government has the motivation to have your interest at heart, if only a little bit. People on the right don't, ever. And there will always be more people on the left to own the means of production than on the right. And because there are more people, by extension, it is the more morally right thing to do. Because since there are more people that own it, there are more people to be moral about it. There are more people to discuss these matters civilly. There are more people with families and things on the line, and therefore have more to lose. It's just that simple.